time, weather, and always.
How you doing, everybody? I'm Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips. Heat's still the hot topic of weather conversation, right? Just smashed the previous record for rainfall in Tampa. Still a very nice day. We've got some clouds out there, even a couple of sprinkles as another front rolls through the area. Most of us wake up to sunshine and then very warm temperatures in the afternoon. Our temperatures, they're going up and they're staying up. Really nice forecast, especially if you're planning on going to the beach or the pool. Rain chances very slim. It's another beautiful day in store. It's going to bring us a very high chance of storms. Isolated showers across the area. Mother Nature likes to remind us that it isn't set by a calendar. We're always on it for you, just in case things begin to pop.
Streaming from the ABC Action Weather Center in Studio A, this is Dennis Phillips Live, sponsored by AARP Tampa Bay.
How you doing, everybody? It is a Sunday night edition of Dennis Phillips Live. Thank you for joining us. We have obviously got a ton of stuff to talk about. I had to laugh a couple of things before we get into it. And by the way, over the years, I've learned that when you've got a stressful situation coming in, especially a weather-related one, you try not to be all doom and gloom, because at the end of the day, quite often, things don't always end up being worst-case scenario. I know there's a lot of things when you look at, it's always, this is the worst model, and you highlight it. Or this is what things are going to be like. Or Jim Cantore shows up in Clearwater, and then everybody freaks out. If you don't know, Jim Cantore is a meteorologist with the Weather Channel, and he has the reputation of wherever he goes in storm chases, the worst storms are there. For the record, the last few years, that hasn't always been the case. But nevertheless, I digress. I want to thank a couple of people. Actually, I want to thank all of you guys for being here. Starting with the stars, all star donations go to the Children's Miracle Network. It's a donation a foundation my family has been really involved with over the last several years, with my kids doing dance marathon at UF and FSU. It's a great group, do amazing work, and we, in Christmas time, our family does a hot chocolate fundraiser December 10th and December 17th in our neighborhood in Palm Harbor, where it is, in my opinion, the greatest Christmas lights in all of Pinellas County. People come out for the lights, and then they see the hot chocolate, even if it's 90 degrees out, which sometimes it is, and we raise donations for the Children's Miracle Network. So again, if you're looking for something when we get past all this stuff we're going to have to deal with, by the way, I got the Diet Dr. Pepper ready to go. Here's the meme that was out there earlier. You know we're really in it when Dennis Phillips is wearing a hoodie, drinking Diet Dr. Pepper, and looks like he hasn't slept in 4 days. You think I look awful now? Wait until Thursday, right? I mean, we have got a long week ahead of us. But my point is, and we're going to get into the forecast because there's a lot to talk about. And after I go over everything, I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you have. But at the end of the day, as I've gotten older, I've realized that it isn't just about getting the weather right. It's about getting people through a difficult situation with the weather. And this upcoming week is going to be on the list. We are hoping that things change, that it could weaken, that it could change course a little bit, all of which, by the way, are in play. So let's not just focus on all the negativity. Let's at least say, you know what? Maybe things can work out. You get prepared now, you get absolutely prepared, and I'll tell you what I expect is going to happen, and it ain't going to be a walk in the park. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be worst case scenario either. And we'll go over all of that. One last thing. Anybody who's been with this show for a while knows. So this came to the station today from Amazon Prime. Somebody sent me microwaved bacon. I don't know who it's from, but if you're out there, thank you. There were 3 boxes of microwave bacon. This will last me a good 10 or 15 minutes. So thank you very much for that. We've got our Diet Dr. Pepper. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for the stars, the donations for the Children's Miracle Network. All right, so there's going to be a lot of questions, obviously, and many of them will be the same question over and over and over again. I get it. Some people get here late. Some people just want their question answered. And here's my logistics, all right? This is my computer for social media stuff when I show you weather maps. This is the one that I do to make stuff happen. Like if I wanted to change sources, I click this button and then it changes sources, right, to a model. And then the one on the left is where you are, where all your questions are. So I'm not going to be answering any questions now. I'm going to give you an overview. I know that won't answer any of your questions, but I feel the need to do so. And then after we do that, we'll go ahead and go. But at the end of the day, folks, no matter what, and look, you know me, I always talk about rule number 7, don't freak out unless I'm freaking out, we're fine. Look, this is not a freak out moment. It isn't. Because at the end of the day, how in the world are you going to make the kind of decisions that you need to make if you're freaking out, right? And I say it all in jest. I am not convinced that this is a worst case scenario in terms of wind, but I will tell you the water issue along the coast is a real concern. And we'll talk about why in a minute. So my point is, there are going to be many folks who are going to get evacuation orders along the coastline. The expression that you have to live by, hide from the wind, run from the water, all right? And I believe that these winds are going to start to come down a little bit as this system moves from the Yucatan through the Gulf, possibly as a Cat 4, which is what the NHC is saying, but it is going to turn to the right at some point. The same mechanism that causes it to turn to the right is also the same thing that is going to cause it to weaken somewhat. It's called shear, upper level winds around a trough, #sciencey. There's a background to this. We had a consultant years ago like, Dennis, you're getting too sciencey. Don't get sciencey. People don't want sciencey. And I'm like, sure they do. I mean, they want the weather, but they maybe want to learn something from time to time. So whenever I find myself going off the deep end, I always throw in #sciencey. Because I don't know. I think people do want to learn a few things here and there. But at the end of the day, not only will you have that upper level winds, you'll have some drier air wrapping around into the center of this as well. Now, there's a lot of things that can happen, and let me be really clear about this. You see this track behind me? It is by no means set in stone. You've seen the Euro probably. It is by no means set in stone. A lot of people have asked, okay, which is better, the Euro or the GFS? They both have their benefits. They both have their strengths. They both have their weaknesses. The Euro has a nickname of King Euro for a reason. Historically, over the last decade, 20 years, it is the most accurate model on Earth. But I will tell you, in the last couple of years in the tropics, it's being knocked down a peg or two. It has not been as accurate. The GFS is the American model. The two go totally opposite on this one. The Euro has stayed to Florida from the beginning. The GFS has been all over the place. And what's literally happening is the Euro is east, the GFS is west. The Hurricane Center, the official forecast that you see there, is splitting it right down the middle. They're taking a blend. And as simple as that sounds, more often than not, that is the accurate way to go. So, if that is the case, and you have a Euro here, you have a GFS here, you have it offshore about 60 or 70 miles, it's important to remember. And I'm not going to sit here and say that this thing is going to stay offshore. It could absolutely move into our coastal areas as a Cat 2 or 3. Don't think it'll be a 4. I think it'll weaken by then. It is a possibility. But the worst of the winds with any system of this size is probably about 5 to 10 miles from the center, from the eye at that point, if it has an eye. And usually Cat 2s or greater have eyes, even a Cat 1. About 85 miles an hour, you start to see the eyes develop. That's the center with nothing going on there, right? So think about it. You're talking about thousands of square miles. And there is a small area. And I'm not going to diminish that area because somebody may be in that area. But whoever is watching right now, the overwhelming majority of the people watching are not going to have to deal with that extreme wind in that area. We are hoping that if it does move ashore, it moves ashore in a very rural part of the area. Unfortunately, there's fewer rural parts in Florida than there used to be. There's more in the Big Bend area. And as it moves north, it will start to weaken. So there are things in play here that are good, well, not good, but they're not as bad as they may seem. But I'm going to be so clear about this water issue, this surge issue, and it will not bother people if you're inland, and I'm talking it won't bother people if you're 3 or 4 miles inland. But people who live along the coast, and I would say US 19 west, it's a pretty good ballpark landmark. If you live west of US 19, surge could be an issue for you, even in areas that you have never seen flooding before, depending on the angle this comes in, how big it is, and how strong it is. And this is something we're going to watch really closely because, again, you hide from the wind, you run from the water. If we have winds of 65 to 75 miles an hour and maybe 85 in some spots, Irma gave winds of 100 miles an hour in Polk County, and no one died from those winds. There were some roofs with issue. There were some pool cages. There was definitely some issue. Now, we get to Cat 3, Cat 3.5, then you start seeing more wind issues in that small area. But I repeat, if you're looking at a hurricane that comes in as a Cat 3 with 115 mile an hour winds, guarantee you that 115 mile an hour winds is in a very small area, maybe 5 or 10 miles wide. And then once you go from 10 to 30, the winds go down to about 90. 90 winds is not a picnic, but it's not a Cat 5 either, and it's not a Cat 4 either. And when we think of those massive storms like Andrew, like Michael, like ones that were devastating storms, those were 5s or strong 4s. Now, is it impossible that this could go that strong? Nothing's impossible in weather. You guys know this. But at the end of the day, 2 things are going on. One, and this isn't all that good, but one, it will probably slow down a little bit once that trough kicks in and it might lift away. And if that's the case, if it slows down, inevitably it will start to weaken because there's a hashtag sciencey thing called upwelling, where if a storm is over a spot for a while, the colder water up from below rises to the top, and you no longer have that extreme water warmth that you did down in the Caribbean, where pretty much it is the warmest water on Earth right now. I mean, I can show you this. And check this out. This is a look at what it's going into. All right, right here. This is some of the warmest water on Earth, and right now that is exactly where it is. So even though it has not intensified, as a matter of fact, it got a little weaker. There's a little upper level low off to the north of it. I think it's disrupting it a bit, which would be great if that continues. But it is going to be going into this. But look what's after there. Not anything particularly obscenely warm. Matter of fact, even a little cooler water than average. This is your heat content. I'm not saying it's cooler water, but it's a lot cooler than what it's going through over the next 24 hours. So I will tell you, there have been so many times that I have seen over the years a storm is going through something. Dolly was one. It might have been, I can't remember when it was, 25 years ago, I can't remember. It was a beast going into the Gulf. And before it made landfall, it just started to fizzle. It ran into shear, and it literally went down to practically low cat 1. These things can happen. So my point, let's don't give up hope. Let's prepare for the worst, which in my opinion, I think right now the minimum we will see along the coast is winds of 65 to 80 miles an hour. I don't think we're going to see anything less than that. I don't. Gusts to 85, winds of 60. That's our best case scenario. That's Irma. It's exactly what we had with Irma. So that's kind of our best case scenario. You made it through Irma. Our entire area made it through Irma. We had some problems. We had some trees down. Look, you live in Florida. We're pretty much locked into hurricane activity. This is our natural disaster that we deal with. We don't deal with snowstorms. We don't deal with earthquakes. We deal with hurricanes. We don't deal with tornadoes very often, although there will be some tornadoes with this, but they're usually very small. They're not like the ones up north. So this is our thing. And at the end of September into October, that is the time. That is when we get these storms. So if you're new to the area because you moved here from up north, welcome to our world. This is what it's like the end of September and into October. And we think it's worth dealing with because it's paradise most every other time. All right? So we're now up to about 20,000 folks here. I know you want me to get into the dynamics of what's going on with the weather and the forecast, but I just want to reassure folks that it isn't always the worst case scenario. Look, I'm not going to candy coat it. We're going to deal with some really foul weather this week and maybe even some dangerous weather, because if the Euro's right, this is something we have not seen in 100 years. But it doesn't have to be right. We prepare for the worst, we hope for the best. If you live along the water and you're in a mandatory evacuation zone, don't blow this one off. I mean that. If you're in a mandatory evacuation, Greg D, our morning meteorologist, we were talking about this earlier on. Jason went to a wedding. People ask, where the heck is Jason this week? Jason went to a wedding. He's been gloating, sending us messages. Hey, it's 72 degrees and low dew points where I am. We're like, get your butt back here. We got work to do. So, and Shay will be in on Monday as well. So everybody, the gang will be all here, and we'll be covering it 24/7 as we always do. But as I said, I was talking to Greg. You know, we have not seen a water event like this. A lot of folks were surprised by Ada. Remember a few years ago, there was some flooding in places that had not seen it? I think this one's going to be worse. So areas that flooded in Ada Wednesday and Thursday should expect more of the same, even if this track stays well offshore. If it moves closer, I mean, it's going to be a bad situation. But we get through it because it's what you do. And rest assured that the worst of that wind is in a very, very small area. If this were to stay 15 miles offshore, we would not get most of the wind. We'd get wind. We'd probably get 100-mile-an-hour winds along the coast at times. But we wouldn't get that 120, that 125 that you really see a difference in damage. You get 75 to 95 like we had with Irma, there's power outages. By the way, expect widespread power outages. It's going to happen, even if it stays offshore, especially along the coast. The closer you are to the coast, the more you're going to see. All right? Inland areas this go around will not see as much as coastal areas. Coastal areas, you're going to have to deal with the surge. You're going to have to deal with the rain, the flooding, which everybody will there. And the winds will be stronger along the coast than they will be inland because you'll be closer to where the center is. So our hope is the Euro is wrong, that it starts to weaken, and as it approaches, it stays far enough offshore, and that absolutely could happen. Absolutely could happen. So let's not just be like, oh, you know what, it's going to be the worst, because that's what everybody's saying. It's just not true. But prepare for it, all right? Don't take this one lightly. I mean that in all sincerity. Rule number 7 is a thing. Don't freak out unless I'm freaking out. We're fine. And I mean that in this, too, because you're not going to get ready if you're freaking out. But be realistic that if this is what the Euro says, we are looking at some of the worst weather we've had in a long time. And you know what? We'll get through it. We will. We'll get through it together. I've been through many hurricanes, chased many Cat 4 and Cat 5 hurricanes, and the neighbors after the Rita was a 5 in Beaumont, Texas, and I was right in the middle of it. And afterwards, people come together, and they do what they got to do, because that's what you do, right? And we'll do that too. Okay, so go ahead. We're looking here. I'm going to take these graphics full, all right? And storm's actually 5 miles an hour weaker than it was earlier on. There's a little upper level low. I'm telling you, there's a little spin that's disrupting this a bit, and we are not looking at any significant convection at this point. But what's happening is the spread is broadening. It is certainly getting larger in terms of coverage, and that's something that eventually will lead to a much better chance of this developing rather quickly. It's going into very, very warm water, all right? So let's look at the track. All right, this is the updated track. For the new folks in town, it's updated every 6 hours. Now, you'll get intermediate advisories updating the winds, but the track updates at 5 p.m., 11 p.m., 5 a.m., and which one did I miss? Whichever one I missed of every 6 hours, all right? So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here, and I'll actually take another view. But let's start. Right off the bat, where it crosses Cuba is probably going to be monumental. As a matter of fact, we will probably know what's going to happen to this thing based on where it goes to Cuba. If it goes right here, then I think there's a really good chance we are going to see a near direct hit. The Euro has been insisting that it's going to go more here, the GFS here, and sometimes even offshore. The farther west that this center passes Cuba on Tuesday or even Monday night is going to really tell us where this is going to go. Now, you notice what happens. Tomorrow, it becomes a hurricane. They bring it to major status by Tuesday afternoon at 1:20. It peaks at 1:30 overnight Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Wednesday at 2 o'clock, it's Cat 3. Starting to weaken a little bit, not much, 130 to 125. That is still a storm unlike we've ever seen, by the way, in 100 years, so let's not write it off. And then it goes from 125 down to 100 when it's just northwest of the Bay Area, and still a good, well, let's see how many miles it is. It's about 70 miles offshore if this track were to verify. If this track were to verify, nearly all the hurricane force winds would stay offshore. You're still going to get a push. You're still going to get surge. You're going to get the water pushed in. That's not the graphic I wanted to use. This is the one. You're still going to get water pushed in, okay? But in terms of the wind, how close the center gets is going to be huge because, remember, hurricane force winds might only extend 60 or 70 miles out at that point. So if it's 60 miles out, most of the hurricane force winds stay offshore. And then the hurricane center has it moving onshore in a really remote part of the Big Bend before approaching east of Tallahassee as a tropical storm, much weaker. So the shear really does a number on it, and then eventually it actually, moves on shore anyway and starts to weaken. I mean, I'm going to show you, well, I'll show you the next map in a second. But anyway, that's kind of what we're looking at. And here's a close-up view of it as well. So our hope is it stays offshore, it weakens as it passes our area, and is not nearly as rough for the northern sections of the state around Horseshoe Beach and areas off to the northwest. All right? There is a look at the wind field. It went too far. Let me push this back. There. All right. There is a look at the wind field. This is really, really important. Look at the colors. The yellow is 40 to 58 miles an hour. The orange is 58 to 73. Hurricane force is red. Let's zoom into this. And let's see where the red is on here, if there is. Now, this one might not even have the red on it. But anyway, the point is, I'm going to close this out. I want you to see how far out these tropical storm force winds extend. So that's probably about 150 miles. So by Wednesday morning, you see that? By Wednesday morning at 10:30, did the Bucks come back? Somebody just said, let's go Bucks. Wait a minute. Let me look. Stand by. Because they were losing 14-3 at halftime. Now I'm waiting for the score to pop. I know it's on TV, but obviously I can't watch TV while it's going on. Wait a minute. Wait. No, they lost 14-12. Oh, no. No, are they going for 2? Oh, man, they might be going for 2. I don't know if that's the case or not. I'm not looking, but... Hey, you guys watching the game? Nah, nobody's in the newsroom. Wait a minute. We got to let's go. Yeah, they did get a touchdown, so they're obviously going to be going for 2. Oh, but it failed. Oh, they failed. So they're going to lose. All right, never mind. That was exciting, though, I bet, right? Anyway, there we are. You know what? I am so into the tropics, I have not looked at my fantasy football team today, and that is... I'm obsessed with my fantasy football teams, plural, actually. But, yeah, I've not even looked at it. That's how focused I'm on this. All right, so anyway, tropical storm force winds are going to extend about 150 miles out from the center. So based on the track that the Hurricane Center is currently showing, This is 10:30 in the morning on Wednesday morning. We're already looking at tropical storm force winds, 40 to 58 miles an hour winds. As it gets closer, obviously, if the track gets closer, those winds will be stronger and pushing inland as well. But it all depends on that ultimate track, which is not yet set in stone. Here's your spaghetti models. Look at that Euro. I'm going to show you another site. By the way, I'm going to say this because there's a meteorologist out there. His name is Levi Cohen. He runs a site called Tropical Tidbits. Telling you flat out, the guy is a young guy too. Probably one of the most brilliant tropical meteorologists I've ever had a chance to follow. I've never met him in person. The guy's really, really smart. And he has a site called Tropical Tidbits. And this is it right here. And these are the spaghetti models for the 18Z. I'm going to take this full for you. Because, again, look at the majority of the models. The majority of the models are offshore. The ones that aren't, the UK Met and the Euro, right? So look at the margin of error. I'll say it again. The margin of error is huge this far out. If you get this western zone, we'll get some water, but that's about it. So let's just not always focus on the worst case scenario. It drives me crazy. I mean, if it comes on Thursday and we see a track that's going to come right in, you know what? We'll deal with it because that's what you do. But we don't have to harp on over and over again. Well, this is the worst case scenario, and I see it a lot because the worst case scenario does not always pop. In fact, I would argue it doesn't happen the majority of the time. All right? Okay, so again, I'm not answering questions yet, but I'm getting closer, right? I wanted to give you guys just an overview, and then I'll answer whatever questions you have. Here's a look at rain. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of rain, and there's going to be some flooding here as well. We've already had a ton. Now, you don't know exactly where that rain is going to set up because the bands quite often don't set up necessarily right around the center, but there will be significant rainfall totals across our area. And by the way, this is only through Wednesday night. This doesn't even talk about Thursday. So there you go. There's a look at the wind and the rain. All right, let's jump to the models. And then we'll talk about what I think is going to happen. Here's a look at the Euro. You guys have already seen it. It is a scary model. That's 72 hours from now. That's Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock. Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, Thursday morning. I mean, the low is literally in the mouth of Tampa Bay. Look at that L. There could not be a more worst case scenario for a hurricane. But I want you to look at something. Let's try to focus on some favorable things here that are very, very possible. Look at what the winds are by the time that comes up. That's barely 996 millibars. That might be a tropical storm and not even a hurricane because of the shear that it's going to run into. The Euro and the GFS are both predicting significant weakening once it starts crossing our latitude. I repeat, I still think this is a 65 to 85 mile an hour best case scenario. I'll say that again. I think if we could get out of here and get out of this with 65 to 85, gusts up to 85, we should take it and run because the high end is a scary number. But the Euro, which is the worst case scenario, if you look 12 hours earlier, it's a significantly stronger system. Now, I know that the folks in Tarpon Springs, and they have been telling me for years that praying to St. Nicholas has kept them safe. So I'm like, guys, go to it. I know there's the rumor of the Indian burial grounds. We hear about that too. Again, there's all these things out there. I say we use them all because you look at the Euro 12 hours earlier, that's a much stronger system, and that would be a very bad scenario. The Euro is the scenario we do not want. You have it coming in at that angle. It's going to be a lot of surge. And I think reasonably you could see a 6 to 10 foot surge along the coast if it were to verify like that. It's not the Hurricane Center's track. They're west. But I'm just telling you everything, all the possibilities. And to me, that is the worst case scenario. That is the European coming in at that angle right into the mouth of Tampa Bay with a 6 to 10 foot surge. Very similar to what was forecast for Charlie, by the way, if you remember, back in 2004, of those of you who lived here or were even alive at that point. But look at the GFS, comparatively speaking. Look where the GFS is compared to where the Euro is. It is on the other side of the track from where the Hurricane Center is gone, because that's what they've done. The Euro is on the right side here. The GFS is here. They put the line right there. It is a blend of the models. And I will tell you, more often than not, that blend is way more accurate than one model versus the other. If the middle line were to come true, we would see that 65 to 85 mile an hour winds along the coast, much like we had with Hurricane Jeanne back in 2004 as well. We've gone through that kind of stuff before. I mean, here's the GFS again. GFS is a stronger storm to the west, but watch what happens as it goes north. Really starts to weaken. Look at that. Look how quickly it weakens as it runs into that shear. Really weakens. The Euro, same thing. A lot of rain, a lot of surge. That water, I think at the end of the day, if you were to say, Dennis, what is your biggest concern with this system? It's probably the surge, because you cannot hide from that water once it's there. So let's look at the probability and when the winds are going to arrive, the time. All right? The most likely time that winds are going to arrive, there they are. Look at your home. Look at where you are. Debbie, you're right. Irma was bad in Lakeland. Lakeland and areas in western Polk got the strongest wind with Irma. They had 100 mile an hour winds there. They had an extreme wind warning there. Only one that was issued. Inland areas will not get the worst of the wind this go around. It will be closer to the coast. There's just no way around that. All right? The closer you are to the coast, the bigger the threat with surge, really the only threat with surge, and the wind will be stronger. Rainfall will be in lots of different places. And tornadoes. We are in the northeast quadrant expected to be. That is the tornadic quadrant. And that's another thing you throw in there. I mean, tornado warnings are scary to people, but the tornado, if I were to list the threats in order of this storm, surge 1, wind 2, rainfall, flooding 3, tornadoes 4, in that order. That's the way that I would do that. Miami should not be concerned at all, Elena. Or is it Eileen? I'm not sure which it is. Anyway, let's get back to this. So, again, I'm almost ready to answer all your questions. I'll answer whatever you want to. All right, so there it is. There is a look at the most likely arrival of winds of tropical storm force winds between Wednesday morning and Wednesday evening. There it is. They've already closed schools in several places. I think Hillsborough. Guys, Hillsborough's closed tomorrow. Where is everybody? Is Hillsborough County schools closed tomorrow? Yeah. Hillsborough is closed Monday through, thank you. Hillsborough County schools are closed Monday through Thursday already. Pinellas County is open, although 3 or 4 schools are leaving early, one of which is my kids' school. They're thrilled. And they're closed Tuesday and Wednesday. And they'll probably be closed on Thursday as well. Probably. All right? So, that's the timing. I don't have a graphic in terms of how strong the winds will be yet, because we're not far enough along. We will be tomorrow. Surge right now, the only surge even being addressed is in the Keys, and that's a 1 to 3 foot surge. They'll run the numbers closer. Peter has cancellations, I think. Yes, he does. Thank you, Peter. Peter, say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Peter, that was Peter. That's our producer. All right, I'm going to read this to you. We begin in Hills. Now, the anchors tell me I can't read. The anchors say I can't read. I can talk, but I can't read. Jillian Ramos is one of our producers and workers here. She's like, Dennis can't read. So when they did the hurricane special, they scripted it. She's like, he's not going to be able to do that. Oh, but I did. Anyway, all right. We begin. I'll read it as an anchor. We begin in Hillsborough County, where schools are closed Monday through Thursday so the county can open shelters. Sarasota County says they have normal operations on Monday, and there is the possibility that public schools could close on Tuesday to become shelters. Again, that's in Sarasota County. Pasco County schools are open on Monday, but closed on Tuesday and Wednesday. Pinellas County schools will be closed Tuesday and Wednesday as well, and tentatively reopen on Thursday. I don't think so. That's just me, but I don't think so. And to staff these schools that will be turned into shelter locations in Pinellas County. That was furthermore in the additional sentence. There will be an early release Monday at 12:30 in the afternoon for Palm Harbor University High School, that's my school, Dunedin Highland Middle School, and Johns Hopkins Middle School. All right? There you go. All right, so that's about it. Now here's the other thing. The questions show up 5 at a time and they're gone. So if I miss your question because it flies through, because we have 20,000 people in here, ask it again. And I will definitely do my best to answer. All right? Okay. Surge numbers are the big question, and I will be totally honest with you. A lot of the Hurricane Center has not released those numbers yet. But in my experience, all right, let's talk about this. Yeah, I'll show you this map, but can I zoom into this one? No, it won't let me. All right. If this track were accurate and the center of the storm runs about 65 miles west of the coast, you would see surges 2 to 3 feet. Not a tremendous surge issue if it's 65 miles offshore. All right? How you guys doing up there? We have people after the Bucks game. We're right across the street from Ray J. So people, see, normally when the Bucks lose, it gets really nasty because then there's beer bottles everywhere and there's broken glass. It's just ugly. I digress. All right. So anyway, 60 to 70 miles right there. If that's the case, I would say a 2 to 4 foot surge. This is just my experience talking, all right? This is not official from the Hurricane Center. You bring this line from 60 miles to 30 miles, I'd say you'd probably have about a 4 to 7 foot surge. And it doesn't matter if it's Sarasota or Manatee or Pinellas or Hillsborough or Pasco or Hernando. It's all the same, because it's going to be a bigger storm coming in at an angle. Citrus County through Levy County might be a little bit higher because you would be closer to this track. Again, that's if this were 30 miles closer. All right? So the current track, 2 to 4, maybe up to 5. 30 miles in, probably 3 to 6. If this were to move onshore, as what let's just, since you're asking possibilities, if the Euro is right, and we have a storm that literally moves into the mouth of Tampa Bay, like it shows right here, you're looking at a surge of, I would say, 7 to 10 feet. I think that's probably a reasonable number. The storm will be weakening a little bit from the wind. So for the folks who are not in the water or not around the water, your impacts would be lower, because I think you're going to have a storm that's going to try to weaken. Now, when I say lower from 130 down to maybe 90. I mean, that's based on what the Euro says. The Euro is our worst case scenario. The Euro is the biggest storm the Bay Area will have seen in 100 years. And that's it. Now, does that mean it's going to happen? Absolutely not. We have all seen models look like the end of doomsday thing, and then they back off. So, but it did happen 101 years ago. We did have a storm like that, and we've said this so many times. Look, we're in a situation at the end of September and October when a big storm forms in the Caribbean and it kicks right because of a trough. We've said it every year, and we all knew that it was going to happen at some point. A lot of times things happen to cause it to weaken or they go another direction, But the end result is that's what happens this time of the year. So at the end of the day, the Euro's possibility is absolutely one that makes sense. That is not what the Hurricane Center is forecasting right now. The Euro is on the east side of the models. The west side is the GFS, and they're in between the two. So again, the surge question, I think the surge will be significant. Even if it's 60 miles offshore, 2 to 3 feet, and at high tide, you might add another foot to it as well. If it happens at low tide, we'd be luckier. But the water, to me, is still the biggest issue. The folks who don't understand surge, it's a really good question because I take that for granted. Surge is the water that is pushed, if you will, by a storm that comes in. Matter of fact, I wonder if there's a description of it on here. Probably not. But my point is, if you are more than 2 miles inland, don't worry about it. Surge is almost always for people who are living right on the water, whether it's a river, whether it's the Gulf, whether it's the intercoastal, whether it's, because those areas, the Gulf feeds those other waters. So there can still be surge even in a river that you might not think is that isn't anywhere really near the Gulf. Pasco County is notorious for flooding in those areas with those rivers that feed eventually down into the Gulf. The Peace River is one of them, down south. I mean, there's a lot of them. So surge is only a concern if you are accessible by water to your home. All right? Let me see, what else? The Alafaya, I would think, would surge only because we're also going to get a lot of rain, too. You throw the two in together. And that happened, and see, that happens a lot of times, and this is what happens in the flooding situation. A storm's coming in. Once it passes you, north, east, west, the winds come around out of another direction. They push the water in. Well, if that rain is falling and it's trying to drain into the Gulf, but it can't because the water's being pushed in, the water backs up and it floods. So that is what happens with all the rainfall, causing inland flooding. It's called freshwater flooding, and it often can be very dangerous because people try to drive through it. I will. Wendy Ryan, I've known Wendy for 15, 20 years, love the woman, one of my best friends in the world. Wendy tried to drive into flooded waters with one of our storms. I think it was Ada a couple of years ago. I may be wrong, but I think it was Ada. And Wendy got stuck. And literally, her car was totaled. And she was driving down the road, everything was fine. She made a turn and the water just enveloped her car. So, and she had to get out through the window, literally. So my point is, it can happen to anyone. So if you're in a flooded area, you'd never drive into flooded waters, and it can happen pretty quickly. So you just turn around while you still can. Will the bridges, okay, so I'm looking at your questions now. I'm going to focus on your questions. Again, thank you for the stars. All the stars donated toward Children's Miracle Network. All right, so right this second, I'm only going to look at your questions and nothing else. And I will answer everything that I can. And by the way, we have 15 more minutes left on streaming. Bayous near the Gulf, Sherry, you're probably okay. Orlando will get some wind out of it and some rain, but not too bad. Okay? Citrus County, the winds, winds for everybody, I think, is reasonable. Eric, how you doing, man? Reasonable winds are 65 to 85 based on the current track. The winds we may have to tweak. Look, if the Euro is right, we're talking winds over 100 miles an hour in a smaller spot. Okay, Marion County, same thing. No worries about surge. Winds of probably 50 to 70. Okay? Power outages in Palm Beach, probably not. All right. Spring Hill, again, I would say almost the entire area is going to have winds at least of 60 to 70. Sumter County, same thing with Marion County, 60 to 70, maybe a little higher. It's closer to the low center. All right. When do I think we'll have the Cuban crossing, Jeff? I would say by tomorrow night. We will know exactly where that's going to cross. And then we'll still have 2 days before it arrives. All right. Ormond Beach on the East Coast, I don't think you have any worries. Lakewood Ranch winds. Again, all of these based on the current track. If it gets closer like the Euro, you could probably bump 20 miles an hour to it. 60 to 70. I would think evacuation orders from Madeira would come out later tomorrow if they're to do it. I don't think they're going to want everybody on the road at the same time. I would be shocked if they don't do it tomorrow. Thank you, Vicky. Very kind. Wind speeds that I'm saying are sustained. I think we see sustained of about 60 miles an hour. Gusts to 75. Power outages everywhere, but less in Polk, Ann. Would you need to put up your shutters in Trinity? You know what? If the track that the Hurricane Center has comes in, probably not. If the Euro, yes. If the Euro comes up, we're going to see winds up to 100 miles an hour. I'm telling you flat out. That is the worst case scenario. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it does, we're going to have 100-mile-an-hour winds, and you would use your shutters. Lakeland, same thing, about 50 to 60. South Tampa, 60 to 70. It comes in later Wednesday into Thursday. No, it's not coming in like Charlie. It's got a totally different angle. Priscilla, that's a good question. Ruskin, 60 to 70. James, you're right, no golf. Shay wanted to play too. He asked me yesterday if we could go to the range. I'm like, buddy, I can't. I got to track this stinking tropical storm. If the Euro is correct, what about Polk? If the Euro is correct, Polk will get probably 60 to 70 as well. Water surge depths, I've already covered it early on. If it's well offshore, 2 to 4. If it's closer, 4 to 6. If it comes right into Tampa Bay, 7 to 10. I think the models will eventually converge, Susan. I really hope it's to the west. But they're getting closer and closer. Tomorrow, they're probably going to be together. Venice impact, not as bad for Venice. You're pretty far off from the center. I would say your shutters are marginal. I think you're going to get maybe 60. Jacksonville, not a big deal. It should weaken by then. Cat 1's 75, Cat 2's 96, Cat 3's 110, Cat 4's 130, Cat 5's 155. Andrea. Kim, 100-year-old house windows in Plant City, should you board them? That's something I can't answer. I can only tell you in terms of the wind. And Plant City's winds would be about 55 to 65 with the current track. Gusts a little higher. If the Euro is right, I'm telling you, if the Euro is right, we're looking at 80 to 100 in most areas. No. 70 to 80 in most areas. 100 maybe in a few spots. Remember, the extreme winds are only about 10 miles from the center. That's it. Everybody else, the winds come down pretty significantly. Lithia winds, again, 50 to 65. Based on the current track, all of this could be different tomorrow if that track is closer. And if it's farther, they'll be lower. Leesburg winds, probably the same thing, 50 to 60. If you're evacuating Christina for the water, it doesn't matter how far inland you go. You could probably go 5 miles and you'd be okay. If you live in a mobile home, if you have 65-mile-an-hour winds, you want to go to a shelter. You do not want to be in a mobile home. You do not want to be in a mobile home with a 65 or 70-mile-an-hour wind. I can't answer whether you should board up or not because everybody's house is very different. But I will tell you, so that's, I'm just going to have to, all I can tell you is the wind. Again, the surge for Bev, I kind of covered that with the surge. I think it all depends, obviously, based on what time of the day it comes, if it's a high tide or not, and also how far it is. Danielle, you're right. 7 to 10 is about right if it gets close. I do not know off the top of my head a newer development what the resource is for flooding. But if you go to ABC Action, if you go to abcactionnews.com/hurricane, you will see a lot of stuff on all that. A lot of flood maps, a lot of flood zones, everything. Is it going to curve early? It will not. Eric asked me that. A lot of folks have asked about Charlie. Curving early would be us. All right? Greg said that earlier today, and that's very true. Curving earlier would be us because it's not going to feel the effects of that trough until it gets to around our area. If it's far enough west, it might miss the trough and continue going north. But if it's close to us, we are the Punta Gorda of Charlie, if you will. I don't see it curving any sooner than that. I absolutely do not. Yeah, when it hits Cuba, Dan, I think that's the time. Somebody's a Yankee fan. Well, that's because a Yankee fan. How many days with sustained winds? Probably 24 hours. Do I think the airport will be open on Thursday? Close call. Probably in the afternoon. Thing might slow down too, by the way. Yeah, don't think Artemis would take a chance with that one. Apartments, you're fine. I mean, I can't answer that because I don't know what apartment you live in and the condition of it, I guess. But, like, Lydia lives in an apartment. Lydia, our new reporter, and she's freaked out that the roof is going to come up. I'm like, no. The only thing you have to worry about, I would think flights would end on Wednesday morning, Rada. That's what I'm thinking. I think the only thing you have to worry about in terms of if that track is right on top of us. Look, if the track stays where it is, I think we're going to be okay. If the track stays like this, it's going to be nasty. It'll be scary. I had a buddy of mine who used to live here. Now they live in Michigan. He rode out Irma, and he said he'll never do it again. We had 65 to 75 mile an hour winds. Barely hurricane force. It's like, nope, I'm done. That's it. So there are some people who would not want to stick around for that. But what I'm telling you is, if it is closer and those winds are closer to 100 miles an hour, that's another animal. There will be widespread power outages. There will be roofs that are going to have damage. There will be trees down. That's my biggest concern, trees down in a house, truthfully. I think the models come together tomorrow, probably by the 12Z run, which is tomorrow afternoon. So a lot of these questions are repeats, and this will repeat. So if you were to, I'm gonna go until 8 o'clock, and the reason I say that is because I've got about a week of this, and my voice will be gone by the day the actual storm gets here, and that would not be good. So, I will say this again. I'll go county by county. All right, let me go county by county for you right now. Based on the current track, Sarasota County, 50 to 65 mile an hour wind, surge of 2 to 4 feet. Along the coast, you go inland, east of I-75, you can knock 10 miles an hour off of that probably. Manatee County, same exact thing along the coast, and same exact thing inland. Pinellas County, coastal areas, evacuation orders will probably be issued, a surge of 2 to 5 feet based on the current track. If it goes west a little bit, which I don't think it will, but if it goes a little more west, maybe knock a foot over off of it. If it goes east 30 miles, you're talking 3 to 7, 4 to 7 feet. If you're talking near us, 7 to 10 foot. I think there'll be a 7 to 10 foot surge in Hillsborough and Pinellas County if the Euro is right and this track comes in. And the winds along the coast in Pinellas, if the Euro is right, will be 80 to 100 with a gust higher in some smaller spots. It's as high as we have ever seen in 100 years. That's the Euro. The Hurricane Center is not predicting that yet. Hurricane Center is 60 miles offshore. If that verifies, 50 to 70, gust to 80. Irma, very similar to what we had in Irma. All right, does that make sense? Polk County, 30 to 45. Polk County, you are not going to get the worst of this storm. Maybe still a few tornadoes, though. We are on that side. But you're not going to get the worst of the storm. Let me I'm starting to lose my voice. Let me clear my throat, get a drink of water. I'll be back in 30 seconds. All right, guys? I'll be back in 30.
One natural disaster could change your life forever. What can you do? Turn to AARP. We help older adults and their families prepare, respond, and recover with evacuation checklists to help you remember prescriptions and other essentials, information to help you avoid scammers, connections to on-the-ground emergency responders, and lots of other tips and tools. At AARP, we're here to help. Find us at aarp.org/local.
Sprinkles as another front rolls through the area. Yeah, I can already tell I'm losing my voice. It's starting to go, and we're 4 days away from the storm. That's not good. All right, so that's Pinellas County. If the Euro is right, 80 to 100, gusts a little higher. If the forecast that we see right there is right, 60 to 70, gust to 80, just like we had with Irma. Surge, 2 to 4 feet. There's going to be some water coming in, similar to Eta, except maybe even a little more than Eta. The water is my biggest concern for the coastal areas. If you don't live on the water, you got nothing to worry about in surge. If you don't live on the water, you have nothing to worry about with the surge. All right, Pasco County. West of the Veterans, if the Euro is right, 80 to 100. If the Hurricane Center forecast is right, 50 to 65 with gusts to 75, just like Irma. Surge, Pasco surge is an issue. They flood. I have seen water come in at high tide all the way to US 19 in Pasco County. Probably 3 to 5 foot surge. If it comes in closer, again, you could see surge as high as 8 to 10 feet. And that is about a half a mile in. So that could be a real issue. So you just asked for Trinity and Odessa, so that's what that was. Hernando County, a little weaker as it gets up that higher. Maybe 55 to 60, maybe gusts a little higher. Still surge will be an issue. Unless, now, here's one other thing. Worst case scenario, but it wouldn't be for areas up north. If this storm moves onshore in Pinellas County, anything north of it will not have to worry about a surge. The water will come the other way. So wherever landfall is, and right below that is where the surge will be at the highest issue. North of it, not as much of an issue. Okay? Now, the Hurricane Center doesn't bring it ashore, but that could change. Do I think it's going to tweak a little more to the east? I kind of do. That doesn't mean I'm right, doesn't mean it's going to, but I kind of do. The models have been trending that way. We're going to know tomorrow when we see where it is in Cuba. We're going to know. So, and then Citrus County, again, Citrus County is tricky. If that's right, Citrus County is going to get more. They're going to get more of a surge, probably 4 to 6 feet. The wind's probably 65 to 80. But if the Euro is right and it moves onshore around Tampa, you're not going to get as much. So these are all based on the current track and the current European forecast, the Euro model, which if you're just tuning in, I can show it to you again. If you want to, this is going to end at 8 because I really want to try to save my voice. But here's the Euro. Clearly, it comes right into the mouth of Tampa Bay. The wind here is moving onshore. The wind up here is, stand by. All right, so the wind here is moving that way, but the wind up here is moving offshore. So anywhere from where this makes landfall north, the wind is going opposite, so that will not get a surge because it's pushing out as opposed to coming in. But south of it, south of wherever that line is, that's where the surge is really going to come in, assuming it makes landfall. But you know what? The GFS, it never does, at least not in the Bay Area, and it weakens by the time it gets up north. Eastern Pasco, surge obviously not an issue, winds of 45 to 60, gusts to 70. If you live east, let me make it simple. If you live east of I-75, you are not concerned about a surge. And you're less concerned about wind because the wind will not be as strong east of I-75 as it will be west of I-75. Pretty simple. If it moves onshore, north of wherever it moves onshore, the surge will not be as much of an issue. South, it will be a much larger issue. And that's about it. New advisory is up to 60. It's to be expected. It's to be expected. The track will be updated at 11 o'clock. The new track comes up, but it went from 45 to 60. There is just no way that this is not going to get stronger. There's just no way. And I'll show you the satellite. There it is. In fact, you can kind of see the convection popped right around. See right where that little spot is in the middle? That's where the center is. And you can kind of see where the convection is now beginning to kind of get going right there. So if you're watching on our streaming app, we'll be back again tomorrow night. I'm going to stick around a few more minutes on Facebook. Thanks for stopping by. I'll be updating 24/7. Stay safe, and we will see you tonight at 11. All right, so, yeah, streaming is gone. So, yeah, you can kind of see. Here, I'll go over here. I mean, you can pretty much see what's popping. I can read right there. Just watch right there. There's your center. So as this moves north into this water, I mean, it's going to crank up. It just is. We can go ahead and read what the advisory said from the Hurricane Center. Tornadoes will happen with this. Yes, they're very small tornadoes, but they'll still do damage. I had a tornado about 1/8 of a mile from my house with Irma. Knocked down a couple of trees on top of a brick wall. There will be tornadoes. I would still put it fourth on the list of dangers because they're so small, but there will be tornadoes with this. Here, let's look and see what the latest advisory is from the Hurricane Center, and then I will call it a night because my voice is just about gone. And there'll be another meme. Must be bad if Dennis is drinking Diet Dr. Pepper, has a hoodie on, and looks like he hasn't slept in 4 days. Does it show already? Oh, okay, let's look at the latest advisory. All right, here, I can show you. Okay, there's a tropical storm watch in effect for the Keys. Hurricane warning for Grand Cayman. And again, it's up to 60 miles an hour. Let's read the write-up. It comes from here. At 8 o'clock, there's the center, turning more toward the northwest. It's going to go more north-northwest on Monday and eventually north on Tuesday with a slightly slower forward speed. Maximum sustained winds have increased to near 60 miles an hour with higher gusts. Additional strengthening is forecast tonight, followed, unfortunately, by rapid intensification on Monday and Tuesday. Ian is forecast to become a hurricane on Monday and a major hurricane on Tuesday. Now, it's still a small storm. Right now, only tropical storm force winds extend 35 miles out. By the time it reaches our area, it will be 200 miles, or at least 175. Western Cuba, up to 16 inches of rain. Florida Keys, 2 to 4 inches of rain, with locally up to 6. And the surge numbers only go up into South Florida like that. They will be generated from models as they get closer over the next couple of days for our area. All right? So there it is, folks. Again, if you want to watch the repeat, I really covered everything pretty extensively. Getting fried. Bottom line is, you're going to, over the next 4 days, it's going to be a stressful situation. I get it. But that end result of that European is not by any means set in stone. It isn't even the forecast. The forecast right now keeps it 60 miles offshore. Let's hope it stays that way and starts to weaken as it does so. All right? Get your stuff ready. You've probably already eaten half your hurricane snacks, so maybe you need to refill them. Get your stuff ready. Wednesday night, Thursday is going to be the worst of this. And we'll get through it because that's what you do. Some areas will get hit harder than others. Other areas won't get much at all. The higher probability of more issues will be closer to the beach this go around with surge and with wind. Rainfall totals could easily exceed 10 inches in some spots. And this will be gone by Friday into Saturday. So we've got a heck of a week that we're going to have to deal with. And then afterwards, whatever we got to do to get back, we will. And we'll do it. This is not the time to freak out. This is the time to get prepared, do what you have to do, and be ready for what the next 3 to 4 days is going to bring us. And we're all going to be in this together, every one of us, and we will get through this. And let's keep hoping that that track stays west. It'll weaken for the Panhandle, good news for them, and it will miss the majority of our area, especially inland areas, and the surge and the wind would be lower. All right? So thank you, guys. I'm gonna call it a night for my voice right now. We'll be back tomorrow. Shay, Jason, and Greg, the whole crew will be back tomorrow. And thank you again for everything. We will be updating 24/7 on social. I usually post more on Facebook than Twitter because I get long-winded. And I can't do it in however many characters Twitter wants me to. So, again, thanks for everything, guys. Be safe, be prepared. Don't take this one lightly. We will get through this. And quite often, the majority of the time, you always hear the worst case scenarios. It rarely is that. Usually it's somewhere quite a bit lower. So that's what we're hoping for, right? Have a good night. We'll be back tonight at 11 with the new track. At that point, we'll know some of the 0Z numbers. I'll be talking about it at 11 o'clock, and we'll be covering tomorrow throughout the day as well. You guys have a great night, and we will talk to you later. See you guys.
One natural disaster could change your life forever. What can you do? Turn to AARP. We help older adults and their families prepare, respond, and recover with evacuation checklists to help you remember prescriptions and other essentials, information to help you avoid scammers, connections to on-the-ground emergency responders, and lots of other tips and tools. At AARP, we're here to help. Find us at aarp.org/local.